Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something that has fascinated people for well, forever, really.
Oh, yeah.
Can we actually achieve immortality through technology?
It's an intriguing question for sure.
Yeah. And we have some pretty interesting articles and research excerpts here that you've shared, so
Yeah.
I'm excited to dive in. It seems like we're both kind of fascinated by this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's start with kind of a journey, I guess. From the beginning of this idea all the way to the science that we had today.
Right.
So how about the historical side of this?
Well, this desire for immortality, it's not something that's new. It's
Yep.
really woven into, I think, how humans understand themselves and their place in the world.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Yeah.
which, I mean, wow, was written thousands of years ago.
Right.
And they were already talking about quests for eternal life.
Exactly.
And you have the Egyptians with their mummification practices.
Yeah.
So clearly, they were preoccupied with this idea of preserving themselves in some way.
Absolutely. And it shows, I think, this tension that humans have always had. We're aware that we're mortal.
Right.
But at the same time, there's this part of us that just resists
That pushes back.
that wants to push back against these limitations, right?
Exactly.
And it's almost like we're always trying to find a way beyond our finite existence.
Yeah, and what I find so captivating is that what used to be just myths and legends
Right.
is now starting to feel like an actual scientific possibility.
Yeah.
We're seeing these amazing breakthroughs in fields like biotechnology, regenerative medicine,
Uh-huh.
AI. It's like science is finally catching up to these really old dreams.
I think you're right. It's not even a question of if anymore for a lot of these advancements. It's more like when.
Right.
Like, look at CRISPR, right? That's this gene editing technology. And it basically allows us to go in and modify specific genes.
Wow.
And imagine if we could get rid of the genes that make us susceptible to diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, things like that.
Right.
Suddenly, we're not just talking about living a little longer. We're talking about significantly extending the human lifespan.
It's like having these microscopic surgeons working on our DNA,
Yeah, exactly.
rewriting the code.
Rewriting the code of our biology.
And then you have regenerative medicine, where scientists are literally growing new organs.
Yeah,
That could completely revolutionize how we deal with organ failure
absolutely.
and potentially give us many more healthy years.
For sure.
AI is also playing a huge role.
Oh, definitely.
It's being used to analyze these massive amounts of health information.
Uh-huh.
And that means we could potentially detect diseases way earlier and come up with really personalized treatment plans.
Right. And that could have a huge impact on our health span, right? It's not just about living longer. It's about how many of those years are actually healthy years.
Right, because what's the point of living longer if you're not feeling good?
Exactly.
So that health span concept is about making sure those extra years are good years.
And AI might be the key to making that happen.
It's pretty amazing.
And there's even more than that. You've got nanotechnology, which is all about manipulating matter at the atomic level.
Wow.
So you could have these targeted drug delivery systems or even tiny little machines that repair damage in our cells.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So what about those brain-computer interfaces? I keep hearing about those.
Yeah.
Could those help us live longer?
I think they definitely could be a factor. They have the potential to help us overcome the cognitive decline that comes with aging. And some people even think we might be able to merge our minds with artificial intelligence,
Right.
which would lead to something like digital immortality.
That's where it gets really interesting, this idea of uploading our consciousness into a virtual world.
Right.
There are projects like the Human Connectome Project, which is trying to map all the neural connections in the brain.
Yeah.
And that could lay the groundwork for figuring out how to transfer or preserve consciousness.
It's fascinating work. And there are even companies out there like Cryoris in Russia that are offering cryogenic preservation. They're basically freezing people in the hopes that they can be revived in the future.
It seems like there's no shortage of approaches when it comes to this.
No shortage at all. But we have to remember, consciousness is still this huge mystery.
Right.
It's not as simple as just copying information from our brains into a computer.
Right.
So the question becomes, what really makes you in this digital space?
Yeah. What would it even be like to be immortal in a digital world?
Right.
It makes you think, would it be like some kind of video game, or would it be something totally different?
It's hard to even imagine.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's becoming more and more relevant to our lives.
It really is. And that's where the ethical considerations come in.
Right, because it's not just about the science itself, it's about what kind of future we want to build.
Exactly.
If we're really on the verge of having these technologies that could give us much longer lives or even digital immortality,
Right.
we need to have some serious discussions about what that means. Who would have access to this? How would it change society as a whole? What would it do to the meaning of life and death?
Those are the big questions we need to be asking ourselves.
It seems like a lot to think about.
It is, but these are the questions we need to grapple with as we enter this uncharted territory. You know, what was once just legend and dreams
Yeah,
is becoming reality.
it is. It really is.
It's interesting to think about how all this new tech isn't just affecting research, but also like our culture, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like we're seeing this huge surge in interest in immortality, and it's everywhere. Movies, books, video games, even art.
It's true. It's like we're collectively fascinated by this idea.
Yeah.
You see these themes popping up all over the place. Stories about people cheating death, transferring their minds,
Right.
living in virtual worlds. It's like we're all grappling with this, even if it's on a subconscious level.
It makes sense. I mean, the possibility of living so much longer really makes you question everything about society.
Yeah, it really does.
How would things change? Our institutions, social structures, like what would happen to work, retirement,
Family dynamics.
family dynamics, even our own sense of self?
Right, right. Those are some pretty big questions.
They are.
And they're not just theoretical anymore. I mean, look at how technology is already shaping those things.
Right.
Think about remote work, digital nomadism.
Yeah.
It's changing how we think about careers and where we live.
Exactly.
Now imagine those trends, but with people living and working for like hundreds of years.
Exactly. We might see entirely new social norms and structures popping up
Right.
as people try to figure out this whole extended lifespan thing and the lines between physical and digital.
What happens to retirement? I mean, if people are healthy and sharp for way longer.
Yeah, it might become obsolete.
Wow. And then there's the question of access, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like you were saying earlier about social stratification.
Mm-hmm.
Is immortality going to become this luxury item?
It's a real concern. We have to be mindful of these technologies potentially making existing inequalities even worse.
Right.
Like, what if access to life-extending treatments or digital immortality just comes down to money and privilege?
Right.
It can create a society where people are divided not just by economics, but by lifespan itself.
That's kind of a scary thought.
It is.
A world where the rich live for centuries while everyone else is stuck with a normal lifespan.
Right.
It sounds like something out of a dystopian movie.
It's not the kind of future we want to just stumble into blindly. That's why it's so important to have these open and honest discussions now.
Right, while these technologies are still being developed.
Exactly. We need to involve everyone in this conversation. Policymakers, ethicists, the public.
To figure out how to make sure everyone has access.
Right, to prevent a future where immortality just makes things more divided and unequal.
It seems like this conversation needs to happen on so many different levels.
It does.
Not just the technical stuff, but the social, ethical, even philosophical implications. We need to think about how this affects individuals, families, communities, even society as a whole.
It's not just about figuring out how to extend life. It's about what kind of life we want to extend.
Right.
Right. Do we want a future where immortality just reinforces the power structures we have now?
Yeah.
Or do we want to create a more just and equitable world where everyone benefits?
It makes you realize this isn't just a science or tech challenge.
No,
It's a human challenge.
It is.
And we need to approach it with a lot of wisdom, compassion, and a deep understanding of how complex it all is.
And we need to recognize that everyone's going to have different opinions on this
Yeah.
based on their own experiences and beliefs.
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer to whether we should pursue immortality or how to deal with the implications if we do.
You mentioned earlier how different generations might view something like digital immortality differently.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Younger people who grew up with technology,
Yeah.
they might be more open to the idea of uploading their consciousness than older generations.
Absolutely. Generational differences play a huge role in how we see technology
Right.
and how we think it'll affect our lives. I mean, for someone who lived before the internet,
Right.
this idea of a digital afterlife could seem totally crazy.
Yeah.
But for younger folks, it's like a natural extension of their world.
It's their reality.
Yeah.
And then you have media, like we're constantly bombarded with stories about immortality.
It's true.
From ancient myths to sci-fi movies.
Uh-huh.
And these stories, even though they're fictional, shape our expectations and anxieties about living longer.
Yeah, the stories we tell about immortality really reflect our deepest hopes and fears about life and death and what it means to be human.
But so we've talked about the science, the cultural influences, the ethics, the different generations.
A lot to unpack.
It's a lot, and it's so complex, and it's constantly changing. There are no easy answers.
No, there aren't.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in this whole exploration of immortality?
I think we need to move past all the hype and the sensationalism
Yeah.
and have some thoughtful, nuanced discussions about what kind of future we actually want.
Right. We can't just get caught up in the excitement.
Exactly.
We need to be responsible and willing to really grapple with the complexities.
I think it's about using our knowledge and our ingenuity to enhance human flourishing
I like that.
in a way that's sustainable and ethical and benefits everyone.
Enhancing human flourishing.
Yeah,
It's a much better goal than just extending lifespan for the sake of it.
it is. And it means thinking about the quality of life,
Right.
not just the quantity. What makes life worth living? How can we use technology to make those things better instead of just making us live longer?
Those are really profound questions. And they make me think we need a more interdisciplinary approach.
Oh, definitely.
Can't just have scientists and tech people involved.
Right.
We need ethicists, philosophers, artists, social scientists, everyone.
To help us figure out this whole new world we're
A
entering.
conversation that everyone needs to be a part of.
Yeah. Yes, because the choices we make now will affect humanity for generations to come.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to how many sides there are to this topic.
Yeah.
It's not just about science or technology. It's about our values, our hopes, what it means to be human in a world where life and death are getting blurrier.
It's a journey of discovery, and we're just at the beginning.
This whole conversation about immortality, it's really made me think about, what it even means to be human.
It's true. This idea that we could radically extend our lifespans, it makes us question like the whole natural order of things.
Right, like what's the meaning of life then? What about death? What are the values that define us as individuals and as a society?
Exactly. And we talked earlier about health span,
Yeah.
living not just longer, but living well.
Right.
And it makes you realize how much of our society is structured around a limited lifespan.
Yeah, like everything.
Our schools, our careers, retirement plans, it all assumes we're going to die eventually.
It's true.
Yeah.
So what happens if we change that? What if people are healthy and productive for like way longer than we're used to?
It would change everything, right? Think about education, jobs, even the concept of retirement.
It's almost too
Well-
much to think about.
Mm.
Would people even have the same drive if they knew they had centuries to achieve their goals?
It's a good question. Would the pace of life be different? Would we be more cautious or more adventurous knowing we had all that time?
It really makes you wonder.
We don't have the answers yet, but they're definitely worth thinking about. It's like we're at the edge of this whole new world and we're just starting to see what might be possible.
And what challenges we might face.
Exactly.
One thing I keep coming back to is this idea that immortality shouldn't be a finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's biological or digital, it should be more like a journey.
I agree. It's not about just reaching some state of endless life. It's
Yeah.
about how we live those years, how we grow, how we find meaning and purpose.
That's it.
It's about adding life to our years, not just years to our lives.
I love that. And embracing the fact that we're always changing and learning, even if we live much longer than we do now.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, would achieving immortality make life less precious? Or would it make us appreciate each moment even more?
It's a tough question. I think the answer really depends on your own beliefs and values.
That's true.
Some people might say that life is meaningful because it's finite,
Yeah.
while others might see immortality as a chance to experience so much more than we can even imagine now.
And what about our relationships? How would those change if people live for centuries?
That's fascinating to think about. Imagine the stories, the wisdom, the connections.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, all that time could also put a strain on things, right? People
Yeah.
change and grow in different directions.
Like everything we thought we knew about life and death is being challenged.
It's exciting and a little scary all at the same time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what do we do? How do we prepare for this?
I think the key is to have these conversations, to really explore different viewpoints and try to understand the possibilities and the risks.
As best we can.
As best we can, yeah. We may not know what the future holds, but we can at least try to be ready for it.
I think this deep dive has really highlighted how multifaceted this whole issue is.
It really is.
It's not just about the science. It's about our values, our aspirations, what it means to be human as these lines between life and death start to blur.
And it's just the beginning.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure. It's been great exploring these ideas with you.
And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We've only just scratched the surface of this topic, but I hope it's made you curious and given you something to think about. As we keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, let's remember to keep having these important discussions and to approach the future with both a sense of wonder and responsibility. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds open.